So yeah, I want to talk about some old school paramedic stuff, kind of where the field's going. I didn't send you guys any prep questions because Casey doesn't read them anyway, and he likes to just do things on the fly. And
He's smart enough, and it's got plenty in there that he could definitely answer questions on the
yeah.
fly.
So let's start by just introducing yourselves, like length of time. Eddie, just introduce yourself. We'll start there.
My name's Eddie, and let's see, I've been in EMS now for 27 years this October.
Dang.
And then I've done 24 on an ambulance. And was in EMT for, I think, for almost 4 years before I went to medic school.
Okay.
And I've just kind of been a medic ever since. And now I'm currently working at the level 1 trauma center. Almost had to slip me.
And you've done like a lot of variety of EMS too. I mean, you've been on the private ambulance. Where else have you been?
Yeah, I was on the private ambulance service. I've done city fire service. I've done rural fire service. And then
Now you're in the ER.
Yeah, now in the ER.
It's like the whole gambit.
Yeah, I felt like if out of anything, that was the only thing I didn't have any experience of. What happens once they're there? What
Yeah.
else do I get that I don't see?
Right.
That I have to really learn, which has been really nice, actually.
Yeah. And you get to work with our APPs a lot, our PAs and our nurse practitioners.
Yeah.
Move that the microphone just a little more this way. Good. We all tend to like turn our heads specific ways. That should be good. I'm gonna
Better.
just a smidge.
All right.
Good. Okay.
All right.
And Casey?
I'm Casey. I've been doing this for 48 years. I started on a private ambulance, and while I was on that private ambulance, I also flew. So I've been a fixed wing flight medic as well for a long time. Yeah, I haven't done that in a few years, but anyway, so that's basically all I've worked was ambulance and on the air ambulance.
Nice.
Yeah.
Eddie and I were talking about a little bit before that a topic I think would be good to just jump into, and that's kind of like what's happening to EMS. Why do we see so many new crews all the time? And we were kind of talking about like how is paramedic like a career in and of itself anymore, or are people just using it as a stepping stone? Why is it a good career? Why are people using it as a stepping stone? And I'm kind of curious your thoughts, and then Eddie and I can kind of jump in with ours. But
I've been visiting this in my brain this last week or so, actually, because I was involved in a study last year that one of our colleagues wrote, Eric, was the lead author anyway, and Kim had something to do with that as well. Talking about AI versus human decision making, as far as AI making triage decisions and transport decisions and stuff. And so the study was really cool, and it showed that using a open like Chat GPT tool, they would give paramedics, I think it was 104 cases is what they ended up doing. 104 cases, and between several paramedics, they would come up with 3 differential diagnoses for the specific cases that they were
so the
given.
case like gives like all the patient information,
Yeah.
and then okay.
Yeah, and the thing was, it was really hard. It was like a national registry test. It was really ambiguous because, some of the things were like, well, yeah, it's this, but how do I come up with another differential diagnosis? You could come up with 2, and the third one was sometimes really hard. But anyway, and then they gave that information to to AI as well. And it found that AI was only 75% correct in those cases. But also talked to one of our other colleagues, Josh, last couple of days, and I asked him what his thoughts were about that. And I don't want to say, what he said necessarily, but we have along the same line mindset that, eventually this is going to be a career probably where AI actually does play a really huge role in this business. and that the clinicians are actually going to start being technicians again. And, the AI is going to say, hey, start an IV, and that's what we'll do. Or, I mean, they're, obviously going to need people to go down the ravine, pull the people up, the patients up and stuff. Then again, Elon Musk, who knows what he's going to do? He'll have a robot do that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I think we're headed into some kind of cool areas and stuff. I think there'll probably be some people digging their heels in trying to keep that from happening, but I think that's inevitable. And, I just kind of see that kind of on the horizon.
No, I agree. I think on the positive side of it, I think at least in the ER, it could allow us a lot more time at the bedside, at least as the providers. Like, most of my time is spent staring at this computer and putting in orders and typing things up. And if AI did all that, which it could do, I feel like I could spend more time actually explaining things to the patient, spend more time talking to them, getting their history, and actually making the process not so scary for them. And instead of running in and out of the rooms like we have to sometimes now, I think it actually could help quite a bit.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you could have AI, you could plug in all their symptoms, and AI could be like, they have a 0.005% chance of having appendicitis. You don't need to order anything on this patient. And you can give the patient that option and be like, hey, this is really unlikely to be the thing you're worried about or that your doctor sent you in concerned for. Do you want to get, an IV and a CAT scan for this chance of it being appendicitis? And then the patient can make the decision if they want to, because a lot of our workups are negative. It's ruling out the bad stuff and saying, hey, you're safe to follow up with your doctor, and AI could make that easier. But
I think it's been, I feel really fortunate because I got into this in its infancy. And so I've seen all of these changes.
I've never done handwritten reports. That was really a long time. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
Maybe when the computers failed, maybe I had to write one once, but
yeah,
I'm sure I had to type it up at some point.
I remember writing them and falling asleep writing them. Have a line across the. Now I when I do them, I fall asleep. It just says, "Oh."
What other big things have you guys seen change? You guys have both been in the field. I mean, Eddie, you're close to twice as long, and I consider myself in emergency medicine just in general now for 16 years, and that includes EMS and then now the ER. But what other stuff have you guys seen that has changed?
Well, if I can, just wanted to go back when you were talking about AI involved in the ambulance transport business. Mm-hmm. Do you still think there's going to be a need on the human side to like he said? I kind of imagine it as in you'll take a laptop, whatever, iPad, and that'll be your buddy for the day, and you just type that in, and it gives you what you want, what you're supposed to do, and that's how the protocols would be based. Not necessarily that AI will do everything, or do you see it progressing into that point?
I think there's always got to be a human
factor,
sure. Because, we're humans, right? You don't want machines.
No. And I meant on the sense of, they're talking about driverless cars.
Oh, yeah. Well, I see that, though.
So,
maybe 20 years, 30 years, you may not have a partner necessarily.
Oh, that's crazy.
You may have that, AI buddy that you go in with, and, you move the patient outside or whatever, and you get him in the ambulance, and, your buddy drives you to the hospital.
Yeah.
Do you think that will improve medicine on using AI like that?
Well, I don't know.
Well, you said it was correct about 75% of the time.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, Eddie, is you got to think about that. AI is always expanding. It's not like us where, when we go to school, we get up, we read the book, we go to school, we take a test, we continually read, we come home, we go to bed, get up the next morning, eat breakfast. AI doesn't have to do any of that. It can learn 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Sure.
And it it's going to get to the point where it's closer to 100%.
Sure.
Accuracy, and but it takes time for it to learn, and it'll do it. It's going to do it.
One thing I think the human element that I don't know that AI can achieve is your gestalt.
Yeah, that's
you know,
true.
like I rely on that a lot.
I do
feel
too.
like in the ER, you know, or even on the ambulance, like being able to look at a patient and being like, this guy's sick. I can't tell you specifically what data point means that they're sick. Their vital signs are fine, but this person is really sick, and we need to take them more seriously. And I don't know if AI can get all this data from thousands and thousands and millions of patient cases and be able to say sick versus not sick when the vital signs are normal and maybe their lab work's normal, but there's just something else going on that you just can't put your finger on. But maybe it's when we can't put our finger on it that AI would fail because they need data. You know,
and you have to wonder if that's not going to be like some funnel sticking point for it. You know, that too much data, and it's going to be like, oh, I don't know, you know what? But you're right, and there is that factor. I had a case yesterday that it just didn't seem what it was, you know, and it turns out it wasn't, and it had nothing. You know, the guy presented with X, Y, and Z, and those were his complaints, but the answers that he was giving me to questions A, B, and C were completely different.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and that's just experience that said, yeah, this is not white, right?
Yeah.
It's, you know, he's full of crap is what he is.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I'll say my gestalt's been erroneous many times too. I mean,
Well, sure.
I've had plenty of patients I've been like, I don't think anything's going on. They look fine, and it turns out they're really not fine. So, I mean,
sorry. I need a stick.
you need a stick.
Yeah, I'm going to cough part of that lung out, and then
Oh.
I just need to shove it back in with a stick.
You've got the same thing where we all are taking turns with, I think.
Yeah, it's awful.
Why do you guys think that we're seeing so many transient people in EMS? I mean, we see new crews all the time. I feel like they're not super committed to the job. Maybe they're clearly using this as a stepping stone. I mean, why do we see less people that get into paramedicine to stay a paramedic? I mean, myself included. I went on to PA school, and I don't know that I guess I did kind of even from the start. I looked at it as more of a stepping stone. I knew when I was in paramedic school that I wanted to end up at PA, and I wouldn't trade my time as a paramedic for anything, but I did use it as a stepping stone. I mean, why do you think there's so many people that do that as opposed to staying career paramedics?
That's tough for me because I told you before, I grew up in an era with these guys where, you know, it meant something to them, and it was the whole organization. It meant something. You just didn't do it because you were a paramedic. And I think, you know, you might have experienced some of that time too, but that was more of you do it because it's the right thing to do and you understand what you're doing and what it's going to benefit. And you don't just do it because you have a patch on your shoulder and that's what you can do. And I feel like we've lost that throughout this coming, you know, new generation of medics that are coming through. But I often wonder too, is it because we've softened up medicine for everybody, and that's what made everybody be more of, it's easy. I'm going to tell you from experience, at least from me, there was nothing easy about going to paramedic school and then learning from these dudes. There was nothing easy about it. It is really one of the hardest things I've ever done. And it just doesn't seem like it's like that for some of these people now, you know, the generation we're putting out. I don't know where that's from, but I just feel like we've lost that, you know, that pride of, I take pride in doing good medicine, and my name in the medicine I do means something. And now it's more of like just a job. It's just and I don't know if it's because of pay or if it's because a lot of people don't want to hold on to that kind of responsibility, or if that's not their end goal, but it's a way to learn medicine quickly to move up to whatever that end goal is, PA, doctor. And I know because I remember a lot of times when I was on the streets, a lot of college kids would come through as EMTs and just say, oh, I'm just taking this course because I'm pre-med. They have no desire to be an EMT. They're going to be an EMT, do their rides, get their cert, but they're doing it because it counts as credits towards their pre-med.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that generation is filtering through still, but I don't know. It's just tough. It's just a disappointment to see. I just don't think it's the same. I just don't think the meaning of what it meant to us being a good paramedic in a good system and really having opportunities around you to learn and grow and make yourself better. I just don't see that.
Yeah, and I wonder too if, like, as organizations grow, like what the feedback mechanism is like as opposed to it was years ago. Because we were talking before how when you brought in a patient, you know there's probably going to be other crews standing around. They're going to see you bring this patient in. there's going to be nurses that you know, doctors that you know really well, and they're going to criticize you if you failed to do an intervention that was warranted, or if you missed a tube and you didn't get somebody intubated, or whatever the high-level skill is. You're going to get some criticism and some feedback, and I almost wonder if as everything has grown, that feedback just isn't there. And maybe that's part of it, but I mean, we see so many crews now that I hesitate because I don't know them very well to be like, hey, did you guys think about this on this call? Or why'd you guys do this? Or, why'd you give, the big example I always use is why'd you give Cardizem just because they're an AFib with RVR? Did you consider why they're an AFib with RVR before you just blindly said AFib with RVR equals Cardizem? Did you consider them being septic or some, this is their sinus tachycardia? Did you consider that? But I worry if I just jump on their case, I don't know them very well. Are they just going to take that and dig in their heels, with whatever their treatment was, and not take it as the feedback that it's meant to be, since we just don't know each other as well anymore, I think. And maybe that's part of it. I don't know.
I think we have a kinder, gentler system.
And that's what I meant about softening.
Yeah. When we used to do case reviews and in-services where we would get everybody together, there'd be, 60, 100 people in a room reviewing case that went either good or bad. And boy, you got up and presented your case, and it was a free-for-all. I remember standing up there a couple times going, trying to explain the case and have some, medic in the back go, well, what the hell did you do that for? That's probably one of the dumbest moves that you could have probably done. And, and did it bloody my nose? Probably. But, I learned from it. And I think we've been led away from being like that. When I first came to Colorado Springs, I had worked in Denver, not worked, but I'd done my training up there, and their field training system up at Denver General at the time was, it was like basic training, or it was like going through buds for paramedics. I mean, it really was. It was really a tough time for those new people up there at Denver. And when they got through and they got that patch, they knew they'd done something. And now, I think it's more check a box, check a box, check a box, check a box. You've done that. Here's your badge. And I think we don't put enough importance in holding each other accountable, because what happens, hey, Eddie, what'd you do that for?
Right.
Well, Eddie goes to HR, right?
Right.
Because Casey's picking on Eddie. And so, there's a lot of that problem with it. And in the effort to keep people's feelings from being hurt, big deal, who cares? It's a patient's life in the balance. I want somebody to tell me if I screw it up, so I don't screw it up again. Mm-hmm. And, that's always been the case with me. And, when somebody pointed out, hey, you did this wrong, I didn't dig my heels in. I looked at it and went, hey, you're right. I really screwed that one up. And you know what? I would make that mistake, and I wouldn't make it again.
I used to live in fear of Dr. R. He
Yeah.
would, because if you had a bad case, like this guy's personally reviewing it. He was the one medical director for the whole system, so he saw it all.
Yeah.
And I remember one case I gave Versed, and he thought I was giving it just to get a guy intubated. I couldn't RSI. I was not an RSI medic. And my chart read like I just gave this guy a bunch of benzos so I could secure a tube in his airway. Well, he was having seizures, and it was a complicated case. And I just remember getting pulled into his office, and
He
like,
rubbed the head.
I'm watching you. He's like, this, you need to be careful when you're giving this med.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm watching your charts from now on. And I was like, oh my gosh. But you there was a little bit of healthy fear that the doctor that's overseeing you is going to come down on you if you do something wrong, or if you overstep your bounds or whatever. I don't know if maybe that's part of it too.
Yeah, I think that might be a little bit of it. But, when Marilyn was the advisor when I first got here, you walked in fear of her.
For sure.
And, it's that's changed, and And it's not that our physician, directors are bad people. They're not. They're really good and they're really smart. You've had Kosh on here a couple of times, and Les and Doug and all these really great ER docs that are just freaking smart, and we can learn so much from them. But it's just not the same as it used to be. I mean, boy, if you got a notification to go see Marilyn, it was like, oh dear God.
I felt the same way, even if it was Dr. R, I'd just be, or Mark.
Yeah.
Even, I would just be like, oh no, like what, and I don't feel like there is that, like we were just, I really agree with you. There's no individual accountability. I was talking to some coworkers and I had mentioned that when I went to go on the first time on the ambulance to FI, I walked up to my FTO and I said, my name's Eddie. It's nice to meet you. I'm your FI tonight. And this gentleman looked at me and said, well, I hope you know what the F you're doing, because I'm not here to babysit you. And he walked off and said, check in the truck, and walked off. And I had never checked in the truck. So I was like, okie dokie. Yes, sir. Yeah. I will be checking in the truck. But that is what made me go, man, I want to be one of these guys someday. You know what I mean? I want to be one of these guys. I want to be so smart and so on my game. You know what I mean? That I can be confident like that. And that made me want to work harder. I took it as it was more of a challenge, like we're going to run you out of here if you don't fit. You're not going to windle your way by these smart guys.
Yeah.
You're either going to come in and show us that you're learning, you want to learn, you listen to what we tell you and help you grow, you'll be just fine, or you can come in and be I'm the cocky EMT, I know everything, and you won't be here.
Yeah.
And we just don't have that kind of system anymore.
Mm-hmm. You a cocky EMT?
I mean, this one guy had told me one time that I might have been that way. It was a great reflection.
I remember that day.
Yeah, I love that guy to death, though, because of that.
No.
I was a cocky EMT for, I think, about 6 months before. That's about how long it took to get me humbled and realize I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
Or you could be like I did and just walk up to the person and be like, hey, so I just get this impression you don't like me. And they look you straight in the face and they go, I don't. And then you just go, uh-oh. I probably shouldn't have asked that, right? But it helped me grow.
Yeah.
It helped me grow tremendously.
Yeah.
How do you get, what advice do you guys have for people that are looking to make paramedicine a career? I mean, it's not like it's easy schooling. I mean, this is like trial by fire. I mean, that was the hardest thing I'd done to that point. And PA school was a similar hard. It was just longer.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like academically PA school was more difficult. It was just a longer stretch of time. You're learning more general medicine as opposed to just emergency medicine specific topics. And you're in class longer, and it's for a longer stretch of time. But it's not like academically paramedic school was a walk in the park compared to PA school. I mean, it's a very difficult thing to go through. And then working as a paramedic is a whole nother ball of wax when you go from learning everything in the academic side to actually applying it in real life. I mean, I remember dealing with my first patients when I was in my third phase, most of the way through my phases in paramedic school, and just looking at a patient, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I had a good teacher, Adam, who you guys know, and he was like, if you were in phase 4, if you were in the last phase, I would have failed you. You're in phase 3, so I've got a little bit more grace for you. But I just remember having this patient that was in a flutter, 2-to-1 A flutter, and I couldn't put that together with the whole patient picture and decide on an intervention. I'm like, okay, I can decide they're in a flutter. I kind of have the whole list of symptoms they have going on, but I couldn't put it together with we should probably rate control them or do something about it because they're real symptomatic. And I just remember it took a long time to get through that, head knowledge to actually applying it in the field. I mean, it's not easy. So what advice do you guys have for people that want to make it a career?
Well, first of all, you have to find that person that wants to do that. I mean, like we've said, in the last half hour, that where are those people? Are they do they want to be paramedics, or is it, do they want to be a PA, or do they want to be a doctor? You know, in the case of Adam, and so many other people that we've had here. I just don't know if there's many of those people that really want to be a PA or a paramedic for 20 plus years. Gosh, that seems like a short period of time now that I look back on it, but I mean, because that's 20 years ago was not very long ago, was it, Eddie?
No.
And it's, I really don't have any advice for those people, because they're hard to find, and I don't know what to tell them. It's just, I don't know.
And I'll just preface this question too by, I think it's a good question for you, G, because you have made paramedicine your career, and I will add that you're not burned out people at work either, which I think we see a lot of that where people have made it and they get stuck there, and it's not really an intentional, it's not maybe what they intended to do, but here they are stuck doing it. I see them in some of the transfer companies, they're just going through the motions and just doing transfers, and this is kind of where they ended up getting stuck, and their behavior reflects that. They're not professional. They don't care about the patients. They don't care about their uniform. They don't care how they look to the public. And I think that's different than maybe the people that intentionally have chose this direction. And
it's a job for them. For some people it's a life. Some people it's a job.
Thank you.
And
the life.
And if you can, if you find somebody that wants that life, then gosh, grab a hold of them and mentor those people.
Well, I can tell you, and I'm pretty sure you've seen it. I've seen it just sitting where I'm working now, and they come through and they walk by, and you can just tell the old school guys that it's their life. They made this their life. This is what I wanted to do. Their boots are clean. Their pants are clean. They have a nice shirt on. That's not all, you know what I mean? And then you see the other EMT who's the new guy who comes in with the pants that look like they haven't been, ironed or anything. They're kind of loose, and he's got just a t-shirt on and his half jacket, and you know what I mean? Our hair's kind of, and I was always taught by, when I was growing up in the business, that, you're walking into somebody who doesn't know you, who's never seen you before in their life, and you're expecting them to trust you with their life the way you look. Like, your first impression is the only impression they have to trust you before you even do anything.
Yeah.
And it's just so, these little life rules, I feel like, are just forgotten or just not important to people. And they are to me still. And you can see that throughout the people who come rolling through the ER, because they're dressed like that.
Yep.
And that's how I can always tell if that guy's been a medic for a minute. You know what I mean? Because it's always the older school guys that still believe in that this is my life. This is my job, And then you see the generation attached with them that just is not like that.
Yeah. It's sad.
It is kind of to me. I don't know. It is kind of to me. It really is, because medicine was good back then, And because the guys had so much respect for it, they got to do a lot of things and got respected for what they did do. And I feel like as the time has evolved, the medicine isn't so much respected, and now we've softened how we do it, how we teach it, and again, holding accountability for one another, that's changed too.
Yeah.
I remember back in the day, if you failed your FI program, you were gone. There was no going and complaining. There was no, oh, mother, may I? It was, no, these are the best of the best that work here, and they don't think that you're going to fit with our company and your skills. So we appreciate your time. And then somehow it evolved to, well, I want somebody else. I don't believe him, or, that kind of stuff. And I don't know how we let that go when it's such an important role in our city and in society.
Well, I know one of the reasons is that for a while there we had, we couldn't get butts in seats. There was not enough people. There were no paramedics. There were no EMTs. There was nobody to hire.
Right.
And, when somebody did, apply, you snagged them, you snatched them up, and then you hope that you could train them. The problem is that some of them couldn't be trained,
Yeah.
and but they're hard to get rid of too. And
Yeah.
so,
I mean, it is a tough position that I think EMS is in. I think on one hand, there's a private sector, and a lot of people try to avoid private sector because they don't offer, obviously, the same kind of, benefits that you would be if you were attached to a county or a city. We all know that. But I think over the years, I mean, I think the private sector has done really good to recognize that as best that it can. I mean, and I think there's a misunderstanding on how, I think that part is just people don't understand financially how that works for a private sector, and how much they really do lose. But I think overall they've done a good job, but I think that's going to have to be a part of it too, because I think a lot of people, now that it's softer and it's kind of been dumbed down through schools too, as far as, they're not learning drip rates and things like this anymore. And I kind of feel like, if you're going to do that, then it's going to be kind of hard to fight for higher pay, because we're making it easier for you to do it.
Yeah.
The problem is it doesn't take away the responsibility.
Right.